Bonjour et bienvenue au cas de comptabilité. Veuillez me confirmer la liste de votre équipe. G. Est-ce que vous préférez la lecture des règlements en français ou en anglais?
En anglais, s'il vous plaît.
For this case, you'll have 20 minutes to make your presentation in front of the judge. If your presentation lasts under 18 minutes, you'll receive a 1-point penalty for every 30 seconds. If your presentation lasts under 10 minutes, you will receive the score of 0 at the general ranking for this case. If after 20 minutes you have not completed the presentation, you will be stopped to move on to the period of questions. At the end of the presentation, the judges will have 5 minutes to ask their question. I remind the jury that it's mandatory to ask a minimum of 1 question during this period. If after 5 minutes you have not finished answering the question, you will be stopped. Throughout the presentation, I will indicate the remaining time using cardboards at 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and 30 seconds, and I will make a countdown using my finger for the last 10 seconds. I remind you that it is prohibited to say the name of your university, and if you do, you will receive a penalty. I also remind the public that it's prohibited to use any electronic devices during the presentation, and that the public must stay quiet until the end of the period of question. Before we begin, I'm asking the room to turn off their cell phone and put them on mute so that we don't interrupt the presentation. I will now ask the judges to present themselves, and after you'll be free to start your presentation.
Bonjour, hi, I'm Gabriel Plamondon from
PricewaterhouseCoopers. I'm an audit manager.
Bonjour, je Claire, c'est Raymond Chabot-Grant Thornton, directrice en certification.
Hi everyone, my name is Henderson. I'm from PricewaterhouseCoopers, manager in audit.
Hi everyone, my name is Sophie Gatier. I'm the Campus Talent Acquisition Manager at JDC.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucy, Finance Manager at L'Oréal.
Félix Sénégal, assistant contrôleur chez France.
JDC, chargé de cours département des sciences comptables à
So good morning, JI shareholders. On behalf of Felix, Paige, and myself, we would like to thank you for choosing us as your consultants. We know that with all of your tremendous growth that this is a really exciting opportunity for you guys as a company, and so we would just like to thank you for trusting our input today. So just to give you a quick overview of what we're going to be going through today, we just want to say that we wanted to give a bit of an analysis as towards your current financial position with a forward view towards the future. So in terms of what we're going to be walking through today, we're just going to go through our situational analysis, the strategic alternatives based on the documentation you gave us so that we can address the issues you wanted us to pinpoint. And lastly, we're going to go through an implementation timeline as well as the performance measures that it's going to impact. So in terms of the current situation, we know that you currently have a bank loan with Banque Populaire. Given this year, you currently have an outstanding amount of approximately $175,000. So in total, the entire bank loan is going to be repaid by 2030. So in terms of the calculations that we just wanted to look into for a potential bank covenant in the future, in terms of your working capital, it's approximately 5 right now, and in terms of your debt ratio, it's approximately 33%. So in terms of in the future looking into a bank loan for expansion, with the 75% debt ratio and the working capital being over 2, you're currently in compliance.
So moving on to the external analysis, we did a quick look at the industry overall. So in terms of the buyers, right now your industry is mainly looking at higher income households because a lot of these activities you have to use discretionary income in order to get into the activity to purchase the lessons. In terms of suppliers, there are issues right now. JI is the main player in the industry in Quebec currently. However, there is issues with your suppliers with regards to bankruptcy currently, so this is a potential threat. New entrants, so there are potential other outdoor activities that could become very popular in the future that could overtake skateboarding and scootering. And in terms of competition, so again, as I previously mentioned, JI does have a very large monopoly right now in the Quebec market, so there isn't a lot of potential competition from scooter and skateboard, other companies in this specific outdoor activity segment. However, there are other substitutes entering the market, such as the digitization of games. So more and more people are staying at home and are not necessarily going outside to get the exercise and the activities that they would like. And there are amusement centers now, so things such as trampolines and this kind of play that could potentially take customers away from JI's customer base.
Moving on to the SWOT analysis. First of all, I want to congratulate you on your strengths. As we can see, you guys are all year round complex. This means that you have an advantage on any other competitor that is not all year round because you can build a true trust with your customers, and then after that, you have as one of your trainers a former professional. This means that people will trust you and will be more inclined to go towards you. And finally, you're knowing right now an extreme growth, which means that you can take on many projects and diversify in many ways. That being said, we've noticed a few weaknesses in your company. First of all, there is a high turnover into the employees of the store, and the store manager seems to be overloaded with work. This means that there are some improvements that we're going to talk about for the store a bit later. And finally, as we said before, there is supply bankruptcy going on. This means that you have a hard time finding the supplies that you need. Now, moving on to opportunities. As you said during the meeting, there are a lot of opportunities going on right now. First of all, there's the acquisition of ITI, there is the construction of the skate park. We're going to analyze those in depth. Also, there is the Also, you're knowing like a growing market right now. There in Quebec, there's a lot of young people that go towards more outside activities, and finally, you can also expand your current activities by, let's say, going towards a more, let's say, integrated approach, such as creating an environment with the outside, the outside park and such. Finally, the threats. Well, first of all, you have you have potential for lawsuits. As we can see, it is extreme sports. It is risky, and there is a lot of injuries that can happen. So we have to keep that in mind. And also, there is the digital entertainment industry, such as video games, that is taking a lot of space right now in the market. Thanks. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, for the first issue, ITI, the acquisition, we had, sorry. We've understood a lot of pros and cons through the acquisition of ITI. First of all, the pros, it would give you the supplier security that you need right now for your equipment. There is a lot of opportunities to also extend the manufacturing process. Right now, they're only offering one of the equipment, but you could also expand towards the other equipment that you need through the expertise that you have. You know what you need, you know what your needs are. So that is an opportunity. And also, ITI has a really good brand image right now through the competitions, such as going on in Quebec. The cons is uncharted territory for you guys. You are not a manufacturing company, and right now the management wants to retire. Both the owner and his wife want to leave the firm to go to retire. This means that this would leave the management a bit unstable for now. There is the potential for the child of the owner, but unfortunately, if we have to ask ourselves, if he doesn't trust his son to leave his company with, should you entrust him with the company as a manager? All right. So quantitatively, sorry. I wanted to look a bit more at what the financial statements are made of. First of all, it's financial statements made for tax, which means that they are using a double declining balance for their depreciation instead of the normal straight line depreciation that is used for IFRS. This means that, as you can see on the graph here, the expenses that are encountered actually follow a curving line, which means that they are understated in the later years, while overstated in the beginning years. This means that right now the depreciation that is shown in the financial statements is actually much lower than it should actually be. We calculated the actual depreciation to be around 50,000, while in the financial statements that were stated, it was about 25. And also there is the whole salary situation with the owner, his wife, which you would have to hire a new manager and a new secretary, and also a lot of accounting expenses that would arise from the acquisition. This means that we estimate that the actual profit would be around $175,000 less, $175,000 less than what is actually stated. This would mean that it would be around $200,000 instead of $400,000. And this is why we think that we should not invest in ITI. It has it was stated that you would need like 4 years to make your money back from the profits of ITI, but from what we calculated, it would be up to 7 years, and this is not even taking into account the interest expense that you would incur. And thus, yeah, our recommendation is not to reinvest in that.
So turning to the outdoor skate park, this is another kind of option that we have available to you. So we did highlight a couple of the potential risks that you did speak to us about. So one of them is security. So specifically after hours, once the park is closed, it is outdoor, anybody could get inside, you don't really know what could happen. However, our kind of recommendation and solution to this issue is that if you do take the proper precautions, such as signs and enclosures, there is limited liability. There's nothing you can really do if someone on their own enters a park after hours. And in terms of the brand image threat due to these free time slots, we counter this by saying that it's still very innovative. It's expanding your services, it's really going with your core values of offering sports and having it be fun and having exercise be fun. So even though you have these free time slots, which is different from what you do, we still believe that it would enhance your brand image and not necessarily damage it. So in terms of, we made a quick decision criteria to look at kind of the really big criteria that we believe are important in terms of making this decision. So the first one is quality. So this decision criteria is met because you would still be able to supply the skateboards and the scooters from suppliers that you know. So you will still be able to maintain the quality of the equipment and then also maintain the quality of instructors, because you can still have Tony overlooking the new instructors that you'll have to hire for the skate park. In terms of customization, so you do, your company really does like customization as one of its very important criteria. So this is also met because the supplier or the constructor, I suppose, that we're looking at in terms of the skate park does actually allow you to switch around the skate park and change it up from time to time, which again is very innovative because you can have different skate parks at different times, very customizable, and it allows you to maintain that kind of innovative aspect of your company. And finally, with the core values, it does go along with your values of really wanting to provide activities to individuals and being able to, be active and have physical activity in your life and still have it be fun. So having a skate park that's open to the public is very important. It goes along with those core values extremely, extremely well. And finally, we did a quick quantitative analysis of the potential revenues that you could have from this and the costs. So all of our numbers are in the backup, but just to give a brief overview, we did a net present value analysis of a optimistic, realistic, and pessimistic scenario based on mainly revenues, because costs are going to be staying constant. So based on revenues varying from 100% capacity for your lessons, as optimistic, which you guys kind of stated you believed would happen, to kind of a more realistic look at 80-85% capacity, and then a pessimistic view of 60%. And given these three different scenarios, we did see that overall you do have a positive net present value, meaning that this is a very good investment, a very good idea, and our recommendation is that you should most absolutely go for it. It does meet all of these criteria. And finally, looking at the little accounting issues with the skate park. So it does require lots of capital investment. So in terms of the skate park modules, so things such as banks and like the different equipment kind of jumps and stuff, all of these can be capitalized because this is basically your equipment. So this will be adding to your assets on your balance sheet, approximately $650,000. And then in terms of the costs from construction, based on IFRS, you can capitalize costs incurred during construction up until the point where it's prepared and ready for use. So this we calculated as $245,000 for a total of $895,000. In terms of the expenses, so for the cost of construction, you cannot capitalize. It was advertising costs and wages, so those would have to be expensed, therefore not capitalized, so they would be going through to the income statement.
So lastly, in terms of the biggest issue that you identified for BMX, there were two potential options that we could invest in. There was cycloroute and route vite. So in terms of the decision matrix we came across, there was supplier security. Given that cycloroute has been in operations for decades, we know that this is very stable. In terms of route vite, they've only been in operations for about 2 years now, so this is like a riskier option. In terms of the quality, Cycloroute is medium just because their bikes are like a bit heavier, whereas Hoodvit would be a little bit less heavier, so a better quality bike in terms of that. For time to market with Cycloroute, because it is beginner, intermediate, and advanced bikes, it would be fast time to market, it would be instantaneous. Whereas for Hoodvit, because they are customized bikes, it would take about 3 months to actually get them, so that's a bit of an issue because that would essentially be an entire season. In terms of the warranty, Cycloroute does offer a 1-year warranty, and since the useful life of the bikes are around 2 years, this is great because it's half of the useful life. That does mean that the depreciation is going to be higher, but in terms of the risk, it's better because with the Hoodvit bikes that have a 7-year useful life, even though your depreciation is going to be lower, because there's no warranty at all, there is a higher risk, even with a higher sales price, that you're going to have higher expenses overall. So our recommendation for the BMX courses would be to partner with Cycloroute for your supplier. And if ever you do require that customized bike, to actually reach out to Hoodvit then, because you do have that connection, but it doesn't necessarily mean that all 100% of your bikes need to come from there. It doesn't make sense for you at this time. So now that we've gotten into like the bread and butter of what was very important for you as a company, we're gonna just quickly go over some additional matters just because I know we're running fast on time. In terms of the lawsuit, nothing was recorded. Given that it is probable and that they're suing for $100,000, we do need to record this provision. Also, we just want to address revenue recognition. We know that you do sell the lessons in advance for the season, so we just want to make sure that the skateboard and the scooter revenues are actually recognized as the lessons occur and not when you actually collect the money, because performance will not have been met at that point. In terms of sustainability, we do understand that this is important for you as a company, so we want to actually do a partnership with TerraCycle. We can come up to this later in the Q&A, but essentially they can recycle depreciated equipment, which is going to be really good for your brand image because you're going to be an eco-friendlier company. In terms of control weaknesses, because there was a supplier change to a Chinese company, we do want to be a bit careful with the check authorizations. So we do recommend that 2 people have to authorize all purchases that are essentially major. In terms of this, however, because there was this issue that happened, we do recommend a closer look at your internal controls just to make sure that there aren't any other weaknesses, just as a precautionary measure to be proactive. We also want to go quickly into Jason's compensation. Currently, he does have a flat base pay of $88,000. Because he is taking all these advertising needs and doing his best to increase sales, we do recommend implementing a bonus based on a percentage of the increase in store revenues, not the gross profit, just because there could be a means for undercutting in suppliers and quality, which we don't want to risk because that's one of your main brand differentiators is your quality, so that's why it's revenues. And also in terms of the store hours and discounts, you're currently open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 5 days a week, which is 60 hours a week. This doesn't particularly make sense given that the park is actually only open 18 hours a week. So in terms of that excess capacity, that's tremendous. It's more than triple of what it should be open. So what we recommend is that the store be open during park hours, so that 18 hours a week. But we also recommend being open 30 minutes before you open and 30 minutes after you close, just in case you have a lesson, you want to come in early, we have a lesson, you want to buy something after. So that comes out to about 25 hours a week, and you're going to be able to save a lot of expenses from those employees, and it could also decrease your high employee turnover because you're only going to need someone for 25 hours a week, potentially 1 or 2 sales clerks instead of people for 60 hours, which could result in people not being able to be spread too thin, essentially. And in terms of the student discounts, none are currently offered. We think that would be a great differentiator if you were able to offer a 15% discount to students. So essentially, you guys pay the taxes for them, which could incentivize new customers to potentially join and say, I want to buy a skateboard. I think it could be really cool. Let me become a student. I'll take some lessons, learn how to do it, learn some tricks, buy a skateboard at the same time. I save the taxes. It's a win-win for me, win-win for the company. And based on the gross profit, after the discount, you guys still make $170 on each scooter, and you still make around $60 on each skateboard. So your net margin is really not cut very much.
So in terms of our we'll go quickly over the implementation plan. So short term being within the next year. So we are looking at potentially changing store hours so that they're more optimal for you and adjusting Jason's compensation to reward him for his hard work and increasing revenues. And looking more long term, we do believe that diversifying more horizontally right now is more appropriate. So going with BMX rather than the vertical one with the supplier. And we also do think that opening the outdoor skate park will give you a definite edge. So those are our more long-term solutions. In terms of how this will affect your covenants. So working capital will change to 1.52, and your debt ratio, as you can see, goes up quite a bit to 93%, which would mean that you're not in compliance. However, this includes the bank loan that you would take out in order to finance the outdoor skate park. So speaking with your bank, clearly you will want to exclude that from the debt covenant, which would mean that you would be in compliance.
Questions?
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, I would have a question regarding the potential acquisition of ITI. According to what I've heard, like your recommendation is not to move ahead with this project since you, like in regards with the current selling price. I was just wondering if you have thought about reconsidering the current selling price and what are the adjustments that you could bring.
Did recommend it to go forward with the 4-year repayment schedule. It would have to be under $1 million, and then as we saw, the owner is not really willing to negotiate on the price. We thought this would be too much of a decrease, and also it's also because it's not really aligned with the mission of the company. Manufacturing scooters and such is not part of what your expertise is, and this is mainly why we decided not to go with the project.
And just to add on to that, based on the information you were given before this meeting, there is certain information that we would be lacking. So for example, their accounts receivable right now are about 10% what JI's are, even though their net profit is actually lower than ours. So that's a cause for concern. So if we were to even go forward with this acquisition, we would need more information about where these receivables were from, if there's any other liabilities that could be hidden, so as to better increase the chances of us actually acquiring them. In terms of the information that we have right now, it is a bit suspicious as to the sources of the accounts receivable, for example, and because of that, because of this lack of due diligence and actually being able to make this acquisition safely, it's really not recommended right now. It's too risky.
For the BMX suppliers, do you think there's a risk if you're dealing with both suppliers at the same time instead of just picking one and going forward with it? Is there any risks that you think will come from that?
Well, the thing is, the BMX for Cyclo would be more like for the actual part, while for Ulvit, sorry, it's actually more for the shop and such. We don't think there would be any problem with that, as it's quite separate. And
It's really more to cater to all the customers that we have. So if you want a customized bike, there's that option to get it if you're willing to wait the 3 months for the time to market. Obviously, not everyone is going to have all of their supplies 100% from one supplier. At the end of the day, that's not realistic because you have to diversify. If we got 100% of our bikes from Budvit and then something happened to a shipment and it actually ended up taking 6 months instead of 3 months, that would be disastrous. So it's better to really just not have all your eggs in one basket and to diversify in this way. There shouldn't be an issue with the suppliers. It's business and everyone knows how that works.
And, regarding Jason's compensation, have you thought any indicators that should be considered in order to deal with his bonus or his compensation in general?
So in terms of Jason's, we really did look more because he was emphasizing definitely his increase in revenues and how all of the efforts and the advertising that he's put in has increased revenues, which is a very numerically based criteria. So we did look at basically the revenues because we believe that this is the best indicator in terms of how his performance through advertising and through his efforts will result, because ultimately as the store manager he does want to increase sales. We haven't necessarily looked at more qualitative factors just because we do believe that the revenues is the best indicator of how his performance is working, and as we can see based on financial statements, it is very he's doing very well. And so we do believe that looking at the increase in revenues is the best way to measure his performance and to give him compensation for that, for his efforts.
Is that it?
We're good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.